Welcome back to part two of our production here. I'm joined on the USS Slater by the great Ryan Zemansky, and we're on the twin 40 anti-aircraft mount of USS Slater. It's was a real godsend for U.S. ships to adopt the Swiss Bofors design. We, of course, on USS Cod have a pair of single barrel 40 millimeter. They had a rate of fire about 160 rounds per minute in the manual version, so you have clips of 4, and the other gun mounts are absolutely complete with both the ammunition racks, a full stowage of ammunition, so hundreds of rounds, and the battle helmets and other accoutrements of war.
You know what grinds my gears, Paul? This is not the show mount. We are on the one of the ones that's restoration in progress, because we're off of the tour route intentionally because the ship is open to the public today, and yet it's still relatively complete.
Would you admit, or would you agree with me, that Slater's not intended for public viewing off the tour route gun mounts are in far better shape than most other surface ships on the tour route open for public visitation?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The stuff that they don't want to show off on Slater is still better than the stuff I do show off on New Jersey.
Well, again, the power of volunteers directed by somebody who knows what they're doing. But the twin 40, of course, it's power directed. The rate of fire is in excess of 160 rounds per minute, and this is the classic boom, boom, boom. They're not firing simultaneously, and of course, because they're firing so fast, you have glycol-cooled gun barrels, because, as is evidenced from a great color movie from Cod's 4th Patrol, after 2 clips of 4, so 8 rounds of 40, the gunner's mate kind of leans on the barrel and pulls his hands back because it's hot. This is the cover for the ammo receivers. This is a radar-directed gun. We've got our directors up there and the radar directors, and these are going to be engaging air targets. They're pretty effective, but nothing beat the 5-inch dual-purpose gun firing radar-fused ammunition, which came out in '44, just in time for the kamikazes. And according to Admiral Blandy, who was Chief of Naval Ordnance, the radar fuse saved the U.S. Navy from the kamikazes. It's saved our bacon. Prior to that, and in conjunction with that, these guys are sending out a wall of steel for the enemy aircraft attacking to fly into. But you know, the old one and done thing, radar proximity fuse shell flying close to the aircraft, you know, picks them up on the little radar fuse and detonates, and you splash to 0. But again, these are marvelous for setting up that wall of steel. And I'm just a little nervous up here because years ago at Cod we had a twin 40 mount very similar to this, just because it was available. And you know, showing how curators aren't always the sharpest knife in the drawer, I tried to paint one with a 1.5-inch brush. Yeah,
the whole thing?
The whole thing. Well, I never got the whole thing before we invested in a sprayer. But you know, we can see the glycol tank down here, the trainer, and of course you've got 2 men aiming the gun, but you have other guys that are just handing the ammunition, dropping them in, and firing them as fast as you can load them.
And this version is the twin mount, which was the original base version we got from the Swedish. On New Jersey, they took it and they basically mated 2 of these together to create a quad mount. There's not enough weight or room for one of those on Slater, so she's got the original version. The quad mount's just increasing the firepower you can put at a single aircraft. But on Cod, she's got what they're called the Army mounts, which are the single mount version.
Single air-cooled, 160 rounds per minute, 2 of those. And on the data plates it says heavy machine gun. And of course, you don't fire, submarines don't fire at aircraft. Your first and best response is to dive on the detection of an incoming aircraft.
And you had specific radars and things just
We
for
had
air targets.
IFF, and I was told that unless you were absolutely certain that he knew you were friendly, you dove. Yeah, and one submarine in the Pacific engaged a Japanese aircraft, luckily shot him down. When they got back from patrol, the captain was severely reprimanded, risking a submarine and its crew, because you had to actually hit the aircraft with your 40-millimeter shell to do damage. All he had to do was drop a bomb close and he could pierce your pressure hull. So it was not a fair match. So you spot an aircraft, get under.
So if you're not using these against aerial targets like battleships and destroyer escorts and all the other ships in the surface fleet, why did you have them installed? Originally, American fleet boats did not have 40 millimeters on board.
They had Oerlikons and machine guns, and we certainly had 50 cals aplenty late in the war. You used them against junks and small craft. If you disable a ship with a torpedo and you want to punch holes to sink them quicker, you would use your deck guns. The 40s were excellent when submarines late in the war were sent on junk interdiction missions.
A junk isn't worth expending an entire torpedo on. Those
No,
are
not at all, not at all. But and a junk is the pickup truck of the South China Sea. It's a home-built sailing ship, usually about 80 feet long. They're privately owned. They're fishing vessels. They're light cargo ships. The Japanese began forcing these private-owned junks to carry supplies, particularly in and out of Singapore, because all their big maroos are being sunk. So submarines late in the war were sent on junk missions. The crews hated it because the junks hug the coastline where the water is too shallow for a big fleet boat to dive often. So you had to make sure your radars were working. You put extra lookouts up there. And of course, when you hit a junk, that wood is burning fiercely, and they're often carrying barrels of gasoline or aviation lube oil, which is very smoky, and it's a perfect aircraft beacon. So to give away your position. So, you know, you'd engage 2, 3, 4 junks, get them burning, and then hightail it out for deep water and find some more junks further up the coastline. So a 40 millimeter is ideal for that.
And so World War II submarines would have also had 20 millimeters. What kind of jobs were those intended for?
Again, numerous small craft engagements. You know, early in the war, we were engaging surface ships that were firing back at us. A number of ships lost crewmen to return fire. I know Silversides lost a crewman, one of the ammo passers on their 3-inch, to small arms return fire from a Japanese Maru. So on COD, we carried a single 20. And the first opportunity, our captain put that ashore and simplified his ammunition layout, the 5-inch and the 40 millimeters. And then, of course, as the junks became more numerous or the mission became more critical, we carried up to 650 cal machine guns. Again, anything to punch holes in a junk and get them sinking.
Did you use other small arms to engage junks, or did American submarines in general?
Well, you know, the captains and the crew were given free rein to experiment. Submarines conducting junk missions late in the war were carrying bazookas. Some of the captains would even have the crew make Molotov cocktails.
Wooden hull junk.
Get it lit up and burning. So, you know, there was really no hard and fast rule. You carried anything you wanted.
Sounds a lot like the PT boats around the same time period.
Exactly, yeah.
It's interesting because surface ships generally don't get that close to a target, whereas submarines...
What's the range of your 16-inch 50 cals?
About 23 land miles, about 20 nautical miles.
Junk actions, you had the junk right alongside. You know, when you encountered a junk, the crew would put their rowboat in the water, because remember, they're only a couple hundred yards, maybe a mile offshore. So they're putting their boat in the water, they're rowing away when the submarine arrives. That's a clear indication we're carrying supplies for the Japanese, and so now you've got free rein. But very often he's alongside, and you tell the captain, put your crew in the rowboat, and head toward land. And then we would back off maybe 100, 200 yards and begin whaling away with everything from the 5-inch down to the 50 cals. And we're very blessed to have color movies. If you can go on YouTube, you'll see highlights of our 7th Patrol, illustrating all the various weapons being used. All right, well, thank you for joining us. Remember, hit the like, subscribe, notification bell. We'll come back with some more content. We won't have the great Ryan Zemansky in those, but it'll be interesting. And thanks for joining us. And I want to thank Ryan for all of his help today and including us in his great project.
Thanks for watching.